Okay. Okay, let's go then. Hi everyone, my name is Nick. I'm also known as Pinda. I've been playing League since Season 2, or Season 1 I think even, and my highest elo that I've obtained is Master. I think that trading is one of the most important things, and also with respect to getting leads in games, so that's why I want to teach you guys some general things about trading fundamentals. So what I want to emphasize and also preface a little bit, so the concepts I'm about to mention are really, 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 really basic. That's also why they are fundamentals. And the main idea that I had with this presentation in mind is that I want to show you these concepts and just remind you for your future games that these concepts exist and that you should probably put them to use in your games so you can obtain these easy leads in lane. There are more fundamentals. There are some fundamentals based on positioning as well in lane, and but I chose to fundamentally leave them out because I don't think they'll be of use to us at this moment. And I also want to emphasize that there won't be much in this for junglers, so I'm very sorry for that. But it's about trading fundamentals, not jungling fundamentals. So as I said, improving lane is super important for your league gameplay. Many times I've seen people try to improve their macro first and then their micro, or let's say their macro first and then their laning, but that just doesn't work. You lane every game. Sometimes league games get decided purely based on the laning phase. So improving your laning is like the most efficient thing you can do to improve your overall gameplay. And finding those leads through laning will give you more control of the game. So you won't have to blame your teammates every time you lose the game in the end. And it makes you be in control of your own game. So that's why we focus on training fundamentals. This is what I kind of want to talk about. First, we're going to over some general trading concepts. I think the ones I mentioned are generally not specific to a lane. You can correct me later if I'm wrong, but I try to keep them as general as possible. Then I want to go into bot lane specific concepts. In bot lane, of course, it's a 2v2 matchup, which brings a whole another dynamic to laning. And then finally, I want to maybe make some small points about how to apply the things I tell in this lecture. So first off, and this is really the simplest one, and it's about level leads. So it's very easy to obtain a significant level lead in lane compared to your opponent. And with significant level leads, I mean level leads such as level 2 versus level 1, level 3 versus 2, and 6 versus 5, where you have a ability more than the other person. You could consider level 4 versus level 3 also a difference, but it's often not that important as these significant ones. These are more important than the others because you have the one more ability. So also it's the best time to actually win trades. To obtain these levels, you of course have to know when you get them. For dual lanes, it can be kind of confusing because sometimes one of your laners could miss XP. You're also level later than the solo lane, so you would often miss one XP. But in general, what you can learn for dual lanes is that you need the first wave and the 3 melees to get level 2. Level 3 and 6 are a bit harder, but you should obviously have to look at your XP bar as well when you get these level leads. And for the solo lanes, it's 1 wave plus 1 melee for level 2. And I think it's 2 waves and 3 melees for level 3. So remembering these level breakpoints is important to know when you get these level leads. And of course, the concept is here pretty simple. If you have the lead, you can pressure. If you don't have the lead, you have to somehow concede the wave and let off pressure because you can't really walk forward and CS, for example. And the funny thing is, this concept is so simple, but still, even in high elo, this concept is sometimes forgotten. So to show you, I actually recorded a Master Grandmaster game from US. And what you see here is it's a Syndra versus Sylas matchup. Sylas is pretty strong level 1, but Syndra has a really short cooldown on her Q as well, so it's kind of an even matchup, I think, level 1. So they both don't pressure each other that much. And what you can see is that they already took a little bit of the first wave, so they have 2 ranged minions left. So what do they need to do? They both need to kill the ranged minions and then kill one melee to get level 2. So let's see what happens. So Syndra has more pressure on the wave. She's last hitting more because she's ranged. And now Sylas already has to be kind of aware, oh, I still have 1 ranged minion left of the first wave that I still need to last hit. And Syndra is about to get the first melee. Syndra gets level 2, walks forward, Sylas doesn't respect, tanks and whole combo, and basically loses 300 HP for free. Thanks to Electrocute as well. So Syndra basically gets I think it's a 1 or 2 potion advantage just by pressuring when she has the level lead. Important here is to, as soon as you notice I can get this lead earlier, walk forward. And you see what the Syndra does? Immediately walks forward, keeps walking forward, and Sylas even walks forward as well, why I should move backwards way earlier. How do I exit full screen? Sorry. Next concept I want to talk about is simple cooldown punish. So when you don't have a significant lead, but the other the enemy somehow use their abilities, you have to consider that you have more abilities up, so you have more damage, so you can win the trades. Simple as that. If you have cooldowns, you can walk up and use yours. If you have cooldowns, you have to back up. So for this concept, I have the clip of Faker. He's playing a level 1 matchup versus Zoe. Kind of have to skip forward, I think, a little bit. And the most important part here is that you have to see what Faker movement is as soon as Zoe uses a summoner's ability. She uses ability on the wave, he immediately walks forward, tries to pressure her with his own Q, and now he immediately backs up. Backs up. Every time Zoe walks forward, he backs up, now he walks forward again. And he goes backward again. And purely based on small movements and knowing when his cooldown is up and when his enemy's cooldown is up and he doesn't have, he gets let's say a 100 HP, 150 HP lead. So keeping track of what cooldowns you have and what cooldowns they just used, and roughly the time that it takes for them to get them back up, is what you should think about when you lane as well. Next one. What if Zoe, for example, doesn't use their spells for some reason and just hangs on to them? You see that bad players often use their spells randomly. I've played against many Ezreals that just Q off cooldown, for example. Basically, you can know the exact timing when he's going to Q, so you dodge them every time. You've also probably seen Blitzcranks, which is basically when their hook comes off cooldown, they immediately hook, and then they fill their hook, and then you have all the freedom in your lane. But the better players often hang onto their abilities for the right moment. So the idea is to somehow force them to use their ability, well, by making some movement right where they think, oh, I can actually get them, and then bait the spell out, dodge the spell, and then go in for the trade. I kind of already spoiled on champion, maybe, but I want to maybe ask some of you guys, what champions do you guys think where this concept would work? Could be any lane, could be top lane, could be mid lane, could be bot lane. Anyone has an idea, you can just mute.
Hooks. Hook supports.
Hook supports, exactly.
Yeah, engage supports.
Morgana Black Shield and Morgana Q.
Morgana Q. Maybe some mid lanes. Does anyone else have an idea? Some other mid lane champions?
Lux mid.
Lux
Vigor
mid.
Cage.
Vigor Cage is a bit tricky because then if you get stuck into it, you'll still get probably hit, and you have to have some clean movement so you can dodge in the cage. But indeed, champions like Lux, what did I put?
Nico, EQ.
Nico, I put Zoe. I even put Shen, because I think sometimes you can easily bait the Shen into Eing. But then also champions like Swain and Cho'Gath, it's very easy to bait out the main CC ability, so you can have all the freedom. Especially, I think one of the most obvious examples is Morgana. If Morgana misses her Q, she can still W you, but you can basically walk out of it. So you almost automatically win the trade. I think there's like no chance that you should lose the trade there. Here I have one of my own clips where I played, I think, with Timmy and Maxime. It's not the best clip, but I tried to find a clip where I could use this concept. I'm laning versus Set. I'm actually a level behind. I think we traded 1-for-1 in kills earlier. But what I've seen in lane is that he often thinks he can hit me with an ability, but then he misses just by a little bit. So my idea was here to maybe bait out his E. If he misses his E, he can't stun me in place, so I can easily auto and juke all his and juke his W if he tries to hit me with it. So what you see is I hit him with a Q, and now here I walk just out of range, and immediately as soon as he whiffs it, I engage. He also whiffs his W, and now this basically, now you have to have the instinct, okay, he whiffs just 2 abilities on me, I have to just all-in him now. This is my best chance to kill him, so I go for all-in, he tries to ult me, and I solo kill him. Even with the level disadvantage when we started here. Here I have the level disadvantage. So it's not the best clip, but you can see that I try to dangle at his max range of his E, and then he whiffs it. So what are tips on how to do this? I already mentioned a little bit. One is that you have to move out of this in and out of the spell range. Let's say you're against an hook support. A very simple trick that I do is I would walk outside of the minion wave for a tiny moment, where I think you will try to hook me, and then I immediately move back, and most of the time, Platinum, Diamond, Gold supports would just shoot the hook, whiff it completely, and then I have a free lane. Another one is that you have to be unpredictable. For example, I was watching a clip of Quinn, where he played versus a Xerath, and what Quinn did in that clip is he walked straight forward in a line. And that was the most easy way for Xerath to hit a stun on him, and he basically got choked way too hard. So what you have to do is you have to also be a little bit unpredictable with your movement. Don't walk into straight lines. Walk back and forth. Maybe even walk forward and then change it up a little bit. You have to be unpredictable, and then often they would miss their spells. The next concept that I want to talk about is also trading stance. This is something that I think it's, I don't know sure why it's named trading stance, but the idea of it is pretty good. And that is to trade when one of your minions becomes low HP. Why? Because either they have to CS, and then you can hit them for free, or they trade back with you but lose the CS somehow. Especially on cannon minions, when you see a cannon minion become low HP, you have to apply this concept. It's so easy to get leads in lane with this. A final point is also that they're stuck in their auto animation. They're pretty much stuck for like a half a second because they have to complete their auto animation to get the last hit on the CS. So if you have a skill shot where you generally have trouble hitting with, for example, let's say you just want to poke with Luxie or anything like that, when they go for CS is the best moment to throw out the E, because you almost always will hit them. So for this I have a little clip of a random YouTuber. He's playing Xerath versus LeBlanc. And you can see here, every time he walks up, he tries to Q the LeBlanc. LeBlanc every time goes for the CS. And you can see that he still has both his potions up, I think, because this old season, so he has cookies. And he easily gets an HP lead in lane here, just by poking every time LeBlanc tries to go for a CS. There is some, however, there is something wrong here. In my mind, when I looked at this, I was thinking, there is something fundamentally wrong here with what Victor does. And I want to ask you guys as well. Maybe you play LeBlanc, maybe you don't. Am I full screen, by the way, or am I not presenting anymore? Okay, sorry. What's going wrong here?
Can LeBlanc use her W to get the minion and trade with Victor at the same time?
Basically the answer. Thank you, Koen.
Yeah, Pog.
LeBlanc, I think even in old seasons, LeBlanc should have leveled W. And indeed, as Koen says, she can basically nullify the trading stance here by just Wing onto the creep and also onto Victor, and then auto maybe 2 times to get electrocute or whatever that rune was in previous seasons, and then she would get the CS and still win the trade.
I believe that since season 8 it is that you start Q nowadays because you can easily proc electrocute with that.
No, they do W. They do W. You do just
Really?
auto the enemy, and then you W in, and then you auto him again, and then you get go back using the second cast of your W. Pretty sure every LeBlanc starts W now. Also safer if you get somehow cheese level 1. For
Yeah, that's
example.
true. It's just from my experience. I've only seen the Q.
Yeah, but I think I'm not sure as well, but base damages of W and Q, because on level 1 you can't proc the second part of your Q, so the base damage should also
Yeah.
be higher of W on level 1, I think.
Yeah, but your
Yeah, that's
your W cooldown at level 1 is 16 seconds, while your Q is like 6 seconds. So it depends on the matchup mostly, I think.
Pretty sure most of the time it's still level W, I think. But it's for this, it's more about the mistake Victor could have made here. So my simple question, follow-up question: what could Victor do better here to avoid this problem where LeBlanc could W onto him?
Approach the trade from a different angle, so he's not near the minion.
Yeah, exactly. Not stand so close to the minion. So Victor should position some way that she can't do that. Which brings up my next point: positioning. So whenever you try to go for a trade, you will have to consider whether you want to stand in or behind the wave or away from the wave. And again, I want to maybe test you guys a little bit. Which kind of champions should you position in which kind of way? So can you name some where standing in the wave or behind the wave is better? Again, irrespective of lane. And are there some champions where you can better stand away from the wave?
I mean, supports that engage generally try to stand away from the wave. Like this, we can have opportunities to hook.
Yeah.
I mean, except from Leona, which can be in the wave.
Yeah.
Misfortune brand.
Yeah, Misfortune is, I think, I didn't even think of that example, but Misfortune is indeed a prime example where you don't want to stand behind the wave. A good one. More, maybe for mid lane.
Twisted Fate.
Zoe.
With his red card.
Zoe, yeah.
Stand behind the wave.
What do you do versus Brand? Is that in
Cry.
or away?
Right.
Well,
It's both.
well, there are lots of champions where you can stand outside the wave, either in or outside the wave, right? So if you don't want to get hit with the brand combo, you would ideally stand outside the wave, but then you're open for getting hit by an EQ, for example.
Yeah.
But then you want to basically bait out the Q, right? So that's why you want to apply something like spell baiting, and then bait out the Q, and then try to trade. But I was thinking maybe some more ranged mages on mid. What could be a good example?
Lexi stay in the minion wave because after 2 hits the Q dissolves, but her E pokes, so that's a choice you have to make.
Yeah, I was also thinking maybe about Xerath or something. If you're staying far enough of Xerath, you definitely want to stay away from the wave. You don't want to give him the opportunity to hit you and the wave. I just picked some random champions, to be honest. For example, most of the time Cannon maxes Q now, I think, if he goes AP. So you would ideally also want to stand in or behind the wave, because the most leveled ability is often the one you should be most afraid of. Ezreal's obvious, for example, and then Jayce EQ should also be. And then often you have these mages where the ability goes through the wave, and then you would ideally want to stay away from the wave.
What do you do against the dreaded Ezreal Bard matchup?
Oh yeah, then
You're fucked.
Then you would call your jungler, I think. No, but I think what you would try to do then is you would try to, if you have, for example, a melee support, you would have to get bush control for some reason. So you maybe want to ward lane level 1, so you can maybe even clear their wards if they try to put down wards in the bushes. And then you want to position aggressively and try to look for all-ins instead of trading.
Yeah.
But that's a whole... Like, they obviously win the trades, it's Ezreal Bard, but you can maybe win the all-in.
Yeah, you kind of need an all-in catch matchup. Yeah.
However...
Seraphine Bard. Seraphine Ezreal.
Yeah, same thing. It's just so annoying poke lane where you just have to look for all-ins. So another clip. I think I skipped a bit ahead. Yep. So I was looking at this clip, and I saw this clip also in another video, and I was kind of amazed why Zed, for some reason, Zed in this clip, he's standing behind these range creeps. And every time I looked at it, I was thinking, well, can't Lissandra just Q through the wave and get free poke in every time? But then I looked at it from a different angle, and I also noticed that, well, Zed's goal is to hit level 3 at the best moment. And because Zed's a kind of a poke mage, in a sense, before 6, he just pokes you with WEQ every time. So the best goal for Zed would be that he can hit level 3 close to his tower. So you can see every time he tries to bait sort of the Q, he moves out of range. And what happens now is that Lissandra actually accidentally pushes the lane too early. Zed can get all this free CS, and what happens later, for example, pressing arrows doesn't skip to the correct moment. And what happens, Zed hits level 3 with the wave perfectly positioned near his tower. So what you can do is you can also position sometimes on purposely in the wave to get a better position of your wave, so that they accidentally push. There are lots of abilities which are AoE, which can accidentally hit the waves and then give you a better wave position. So don't always stick to these rules of in or behind the wave or away from the wave. It's kind of the point I wanted to make here. But also keep in mind that you have to also consider where your wave is going to end where the jungler is. It's kind of off topic a little bit because it's about trading fundamentals, but it's just a small point that I want to make to consider as well. How can I? Yep. And the final concept I want to talk about for trading is when to extend trades and the consideration of main aggro. You don't make the most out of it if you only do short trades. Most of the time, you can actually keep trading with autos and actually make trades equal or advantageous for yourself than you would do if you only would go for, let's say, an auto and an ability every time. And therefore, understanding when you can extend these trades should be decided on based on how the enemy champion is positioned with respect to your wave. Also, the size of your wave. If you have many more range creeps, they can easily aggro onto the enemy champion and therefore deal lots of damage compared to your own abilities early. Of course, your skill cooldowns. If the enemy has no skill cooldowns, they are basically a cannon. They can only do autos. If you have cooldowns, you can basically extend the trade and then keep trading. And also your champion identity. And with that, I mean, for example, if you take runes like Conqueror or something like Lethal Tempo. Let's say you're playing AD carry, you're playing Lethal Tempo versus a Hill of Blades AD carry. You should generally try to look for extended trades. If you only go for short trades, the enemy who uses Hill of Blades will often win, because that's just his rune functions better in compared to your rune. If you have Lethal Tempo, you want to try to trade long. So here I have an example of a. You can listen. He's going to explain it himself. I can't full screen it for some reason.
Even though Doka's at a 25% health disadvantage, it's a perfect opportunity to go for an extended trade, because he has the minion trade advantage. He ends up equalizing the health deficit.
So again, this is the most important part why you should consider sometimes extending trades. Dopa, as the guy from the video says, he has a significant HP disadvantage, but he knows that his minions are in the better position here to hit the enemy LeBlanc, so he tries to keep trading. He doesn't give up here.
Even though Doka's at a 25% health disadvantage, it's a perfect opportunity to go for an extended trade, because he has the minion trade advantage.
Here, all the minions aggro onto LeBlanc, and she keeps autoing. She should go back way earlier. And now you see, the trade's almost equal. So it went from 25% disadvantage in health to almost equal.
This example.
Small note that I want to make, however, I think I'm done with the general concept now, but a small note I want to make, that most of these things require you to have your CDs up. Every time you have to use your cooldown, say you're something like Orianna or Syndra, every time you have to use your cooldowns to CS, you cannot trade to the fullest. And that's why it's so important that you learn how to CS, also purely with autos. If you can do it purely with autos, you can make the most out of your laning phase, so you can spend the most time your abilities for trading. So learn to CS. Maybe practice it in practice tool if you have lots of trouble just hitting with autos, but try to practice it as much as possible. Also note that often what gets referenced in pro play and also in maybe some streams that you watch, that around 12 to 15 CS is a kill worth of gold. So every time you miss CS, so when you want to trade, it basically nullifies a little bit of your lead that you gained through trading. Because if they keep CSing and then, oh wow, you managed to bully them out of lane, but hey, they're 10 CS up, it basically makes no difference. So what's the general summary I want to make for the general concepts? So trade when you have more cooldowns. If you have equal amounts of cooldowns, you should try to somehow bait one of their cooldowns and then trade. Trade smart, not randomly. Try to trade with intent. Try to trade when, for example, your jungler is coming, because trading when the enemy jungler is or when your jungler is coming is often the best time. Trade when they're about to last it. Trade when they're about to do many things. Don't randomly throw your spells. Consider your positioning with respect to your opponent. And finally, don't forget to auto. Your autos are early more damage often than your spells. And especially with minion advantage, keep trading autos with the enemy champion. So now, question?
Yes. For example, let's say if you're able to get a cheater recall and you have like an item up on your opponent, should you try to trade once you
That's
got
also
back to lane?
Yeah.
Okay.
100%. Unless they're, for example, let's say you're playing some scaling champion on top lane. Let's say your Kayle, let's say level 6 Kayle versus Sett. Sett is pretty a stat stick. So he's early just really, really insane, but he falls off quite a bit later. Maybe then you should still not consider to push your advantage too much. Also, I don't know how Kayle could get a cheater recall on Sett, but my point is you should also still consider your matchup somehow. But indeed, when you have item advantage or potion advantage or anything like that, you should try to trade. That's probably better.
Thanks.
So now I want to go a little bit in bot lane specific concepts. As I said, a 2v2 lane is way more different than a 1v1 lane. So you have to consider not only your own movement or your own CDs, but also the things of your buddy in lane. Now, this is kind of a mean question, but if you're an AD carry, I think this is the biggest complaint that I often hear about their support. And I want to this may be a mean question, but I want to ask you guys, what do you think that is?
It's probably like that, like for example, brand support, that he hits his W in a wave and ruins the entire wave while trying to trade.
Okay, yeah, that could be, but yeah,
I main complaint is
the title kind of spoils it maybe a little bit of the slide.
Say walk the fuck up.
Walk the fuck up,
Yeah.
indeed.
Exactly.
The biggest complaint, and especially when I'm playing with someone that is a bit lower elo, and especially when they play, for some reason it's always Enchanter supports. They're playing like they have to kind of just shield me and then they're done in lane. But that's not how it works. What you should try to do on bot lane is always stand in a parallel line to the enemy lane, but not on top of each other. Of course, if you stand on top of each other and the enemy has an Alistar, well, you just W Qs forward or flash Qs forward, and then you're basically both stunned, and that's basically an all-in for them. If for some reason the enemy support or the enemy AD stands too far back, and you guys are on the same page, that's the best moment to trade. You should immediately go for trades. I have an example here from an old pro game, and here you can see Doublelift and Core JJ versus Sneaky and Sazel, I think. And you can see here, Doublelift and Core JJ on the same line. Sneaky is totally not with his support. I don't know what his support was doing in lane. Maybe he was expecting a gang of trying to lantern, but I think they're already really close to the tower. Let's see what happens. Here you see it happen here in the top right. They go for a trade. Doublelift gets the root off. Or JJ even throws the Rakan Q, and they basically trade. How many HP was it? Let's see. I think it's at least 200 HP that they gain just by that one small mistake where Zeyzal is standing too far behind while Sneaky is standing too far up. Try to be on the same line as your buddy in lane. Next, I also want to discuss retaliation. So even if you guys are spaced correctly, you can still somehow get engaged on. They could try maybe go for an all-in, but also they could try for a small trade. And it often happens when the enemy has a engage support, maybe Alistar, Rel, maybe some other champion. The most important part here is that you should always consider I need to stop the enemy from dealing damage. And often it's just stopping the enemy AD carry from dealing damage. So every time they go for a trade, stop their AD from helping. Because often, most of the times, it's the support trying to engage and the AD carry trying to deal the damage. So here we have a clip of Keria. He's playing Rel support. He's standing pretty far up, together with his AD. Alistar, you can already see from this small clip, Alistar is looking for WQ onto Kalista. And the immediate reaction of Keria, flash, knock up onto the enemy Tristana. Tristana is literally stunned for 2-3 seconds. Alistar is already out of all his juice, and they easily get the kill onto Alistar. If Keria, for some reason, let's go back a little bit, sorry. If Keria, for some reason, was standing one bush lower, he's not going to be able to do this. So that's why it's so important to be on the same line as your buddy in the bot lane, so you can do these kinds of things. So you can force those 2v1 trades, but also stop engages when they're trying to engage on you. Next, value trading. In the early laning phase, who is more valuable to trade on? The enemy carry or the enemy support? Hit me.
Enemy carry, because he has less pots.
Yes, that's one reason. Could you... Yeah, but let's say for example you can have a Twitch with a Doran's ring, then he still has 2 pots compared to the enemy support which has support item in 2 pots. Why is it still more valuable to trade onto the Twitch than on trading onto the Alistar or other support?
Maybe because if you 1v2 the Twitch, then the support can't kill the other 2 people, but the Twitch can still get a return kill. Is that a thing?
Yeah.
I'd
Problem
say
is that it's very matchup dependent, because some supports are worth targeting, while some other supports are not worth targeting.
True, but what's the main difference between what the carry does in lane and what the CS?
Damage.
And damage also. So if you can somehow limit the carry, they can't CS, they can't deal damage, and just by how it works in lane, the farm and experience is more valuable on the one who carries the lane than the support. Now someone is going to obviously give me the comment, but they could also play Cho'Gath Senna bot lane, and then Senna doesn't go for the CS. Do I still have to go for the enemy Cho'Gath? There are some small differences, of course, but the whole idea is that try to focus the carry. If you limit the carry's capability of playing the lane, then you would gain more advantage of it than you would go for the enemy support. So that's why I have this follow-up question. Let's say you have these lanes, and you're the blue side, so you're bottom left. There is a significant difference between playing Lulu top or playing Twitch top. Which of these do you think is better in this case? I kind of want to have a small discussion. I don't know how much time we have. Oh, we have enough time. So maybe we want to have a kind of a discussion here. Should we play Lulu top or should we play Twitch top?
I would say Twitch top, so he's farther away from the Alistar.
I would say Lulu top.
Okay. Was Sebastian who said the last, right?
Yeah.
Can you give an argument for
so
why?
So then you can stop the Lucian from following if Alistar WQs the Twitch.
Okay. Any other ideas, arguments?
I think it's also easier for
Instead, like-
Lulu to harass the Lucian because of range advantage.
I think Lulu top because you want the Twitch to lose less health, and Lucian is probably going to trade a lot.
Okay. Any more?
Well, I think that maybe I don't think this applies to Lulu, but other supports can make use of the bushes very well. So if you put
Yeah, so that's why also I purposely only put Alistar on the
Bottom,
bot
yeah.
side. Yeah,
Yeah,
because
I
I
think
know
that's-
he has to play through the bushes. So
yeah, so I don't think it applies to this, but like if Lulu was like yeah, Alistar, I would say bot, but in this case I would say top, yeah.
I've heard some good things. What I made of it is these points. So we have a melee versus range support, and indeed, as mentioned, Alistar is a bit called straight to the bush. What Tim said is also right. Lulu and Twitch have more range advantage than Lucian, and what I thought about in this case is obviously it's more important for Twitch to get the CS than to trade, and Lulu basically doesn't have to CS, so she has all the time to trade. Not only that, but I specifically chose Lucian in this case because he probably starts Thorn's Blade, so he has only one pot. So my idea would be here that Lulu tries to poke. She has one pot advantage. She has a range advantage. And also, if you consider that if she would stand on the bot side and she would try to do the same to Lucian, then she would also have to consider that she has to damage him through the minion wave. So she's more susceptible to the aggro of the creeps. So that's why I thought about this as saying, well, Lulu should play top side. But the main point...
Oh, sorry.
Oh no, go first. You can go.
Could you also consider the fact that Twitch can weave in between the bush to de-aggro minion as well? And break line of sight for Alistar to combo on him as well?
Yeah. It could, yeah.
And specifically this champ as well, he can also engage from the bush, so in that sense, it's completely hidden.
Yeah. I didn't think about it mainly. The points that I thought mainly about are obviously written on the slide, but
Yeah.
it's a good point. It's a good point. But the main reason I want to discuss this kind of thing is that whenever you play a lane, not only you want to try to stay parallel, so you want to both walk forward and both walk back, but you also want to consider where you position both your champions in a lane. Ideally, you want to have one that plays more top side and one that plays more bot side. If the enemy swaps, you should try to maybe swap as well. Those kinds of things just want to say you have to consider these things when you try to lane on bot lane.
But for example, if it was like a Nautilus instead of a Lulu, should we try to keep this, or should we like face to face? Alistar should go bot and Twitch. Or like any engaged support, like Leo.
Yeah. So you want to engage support versus engage support.
You want engage? Okay.
I think if you but I know what you mean. So, for example, Rel versus Alistar.
Yeah.
Let's say.
I mean, this was a very common matchup.
Yeah, I think. Let me think about it a little bit. I think it still makes more sense for them to play for bush control, because in a melee versus melee matchups, having bush control gives you more pressure in lane, and especially early, where it matters a lot whether you get level 1 first or level 2 first. Level 1 first, level 2 first, or level 3 first. You should try to play using the threat of being in the bush. So really early, I think you should still then, if you're playing engage for engage, both should try to go for bush control and then try to create pressure. It's also mainly because the scuttle, right? So I think many have noticed that if your jungler doesn't get the scuttle, he basically gets a mental breakdown. So in that case, you have to somehow also play for your jungler. And I think in that case, it will be better to play both supports bot side.
Okay, thank you.
Also note, and I'm purely speculating this, right? And it's different from game to game, but I think that's a general idea you should adhere to. So a general summary again: try to play on one line, play together on one line, but don't stand on top of each other. Every time the enemy AD or support, it really doesn't matter who, but every time one of them walks up and the other's too far backward, look for those 2v1 trades. Stay positioned far enough so you can disrupt engages by stopping their damage dealers, and try to assign proper champion in the lane who plays top side and one who plays bot side according to the matchups. And always look for trades on a champion that has a sustained disadvantage compared to the other champion in the lane. That's basically my general tips for trading in lane. Finally, I want to discuss a little bit, it's only 2 more slides and then we're done, on how to apply all the things I mentioned just now. So I can imagine that you're thinking, okay, Nick, you've mentioned a shit ton of things now. I'm a little bit confused on what to do. What now? So what I did, as many may have noticed, I did a session with Quinn for the first time. I coached him a little bit, and what I basically did with Quinn in the end is say, focus this one concept, just play some games with that concept, and let's see from there. And I think for now, that's one of the best things you could also do as well. Pick one concept from this lecture maybe that interests you the most. Try to keep thinking about that concept and what you need to do and what you need to do to achieve that. And also set achievable goals during the game. So don't... So let's say you're in that Rel versus Alistar matchup. Try to set the goal of, okay, every time Alistar tries to walk up for poke, I want to try to walk up and stop their AD, for example. Not the best example, but it's just an idea that you also set some goals to achieve the concept you want to apply. And finally, don't be afraid to lose games. I think if you focus on this one concept, you often will forget about their enemy jungler or other things. But that's something you have to worry later about. Focus on one concept first and master it completely, and then move on to the next. And that's the best way to learn. Finally, I want to also discuss a little bit about intent versus execution. Intent is whether the play is correct to go for. So that's why, let's say you want to engage. So you should have a reason to engage, right? Let's say the engage is, I want to flash WQ onto the AD because he just burned two skills on the wave for no reason, and I think we can win this. And execution is whether you execute that W flash or flash WQ correctly. Let's say you mess up the flash WQ, then the intent was still correct, but you just messed up. Messing up the mechanically part of that idea can still be fixed, and it's more important that you have the correct intent. So whenever you do these kinds of things, and whenever you look at it in a replay, always try to think intent first and execution second. And that's it. Are there any other questions or remarks or anything?
Let's go, Nick.
Woo-hoo.
Very nice.
Very nice.
Thank you very much for the presentation.
Much appreciated.
Will the slides be available or not? Will the slides be available?
I've sent the link to Henway, and I'm not sure if they can.
Yeah.